He was just a struggling single dad trying to keep the heat on in winter. Until one freezing night he opened his door to a silent girl with no shoes, no story, and eyes full of secrets. What he didn't know was that one simple act of kindness would change everything. If you believe that even the smallest choices can lead to the biggest miracles, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss these inspiring, true-style stories that remind us of the goodness still out there. Now, let's begin. Poor single dad gave his couch to a shivering girl, not knowing she was a CEO's missing daughter. The wind howled down East Hawthorne Street like a beast let loose clawing at the aging shingles of the apartment building where Ethan Walker lived. Snow clung to the edges of windows and piled against doorsteps, casting the entire neighborhood in a cold, bluish silence. It was nearly midnight, and most of the town had long since shut its doors to the winter storm that was forecast to freeze the region solid by morning. Ethan adjusted the scarf around his neck as he stepped out of his truck, juggling a grocery bag and his worn leather toolbox. The headlights blinked off behind him. He gave the battered Chevy's hood a gentle pat, whispering, "Hang in there, old girl," before trudging through the snow-covered walkway toward the 3-story brick building. His legs ached from a 14-hour shift, fixing busted heaters and flooded sinks, and all he could think about was the leftover chicken noodle soup waiting inside and the excited face of Lily, his 9-year-old daughter who always waited up for him when he worked late. She was the one thing in his life that felt pure and whole. As he reached the top step, something caught his eye. A figure huddled against the railing, barely visible in the dark. He stopped. At first he thought it was a pile of blankets or trash until it moved. He stepped closer, heart knocking in his chest. A girl, young. She was curled into herself, trembling violently, her knees hugged tightly to her chest. Her jeans were soaked hair matted with snow. No gloves, no hat. Her sneakers, white canvas soaked through, offered no warmth at all. "Hey," Ethan said gently, crouching beside her. "Are you okay?" She flinched at the sound of his voice, head jerking up. Her eyes were wide, frightened, rimmed red from the cold. She didn't say anything, just stared at him like a wounded animal cornered in the woods. Ethan scanned the street. No one. Just wind, snow, and the soft hum of street lamps. He tried again. "Do you need help?" "You shouldn't be out here like this. You'll freeze." Still nothing. Just that look, something between terror and exhaustion. Then she whispered, barely audible, "Don't call the police. Please." That stopped him. Ethan's instincts kicked in. She was running from something. "I'm not calling anyone," he said calmly, raising both hands. I have a warm place. Just up there. You can sit on the couch, get warm. That's all." "Okay." For a moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, she nodded. He opened the door and led her inside. Lily was already dozing on the couch with her book sliding off her lap. When she saw the girl behind her father, she blinked and sat up. "Daddy?" "It's okay, sweetheart," Ethan said gently. "We've got a guest tonight. Can you grab the other blanket from your room?" Lily, always the curious one, glanced at the girl, then nodded and ran down the hall. Ethan motioned toward the couch. "Sit. Here, take my coat." He slipped it off and draped it around her shaking shoulders. She sank into the cushions like she hadn't sat down in days. Her teeth chattered and her hands were raw red from the cold. "What's your name?" Ethan asked, kneeling in front of her. She looked down, then whispered, "Mira." "Okay, Mira. I'm Ethan. That's my daughter Lily." He offered a gentle smile. "You hungry?" Her eyes flickered, then hesitantly she nodded again. 15 minutes later, Mira sat curled up on the couch in Ethan's coat, holding a steaming mug of soup with both hands. Lily sat nearby, fascinated but quiet. Ethan observed Mira closely. She couldn't be more than 16. Her face was pale, too pale. The bruise near her temple looked a few days old. Her knuckles were scraped. Something about the way she glanced at the window every few seconds made his stomach twist. "Did something happen to you, Mira?" he asked carefully. "Is someone looking for you?" Her shoulders tensed. I just need a place to stay. Just for the night. Please. He wanted to press her, wanted to know what had left her out in the cold, half-frozen, terrified. But there was something in her voice that stopped him. A desperation he recognized. He'd heard it before, in his own voice. The year his wife died, the week he lost the house, the night he had to choose between rent and medicine for Lily's asthma. He nodded once. You can stay. No questions tonight. Lily leaned over and whispered, She looks like someone I saw on TV. Ethan gave her a gentle hush, then turned back toward Mira. Her eyes were already closing the warmth, pulling her into sleep. She clutched the couch pillow like a lifeline, still wrapped in his coat lips, parted in exhausted breath. He turned off the lamp, letting the room fall into soft darkness. Later, as he lay on the floor in a blanket beside Lily's room, having given the girl the couch, Ethan stared at the ceiling. The wind had eased outside. Snow still fell, but gentler now. Something about the girl nagged at him. Her voice, her look, that name, Mira. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a runaway, and that tomorrow would bring more than answers. It might bring consequences. Or it might bring something else entirely. He didn't know it yet, but the girl on his couch had once been at the center of national headlines, and by morning the world would start looking for her again. Morning arrived with the soft crunch of ice melting against glass and the quiet creaks of an old radiator groaning to life. The apartment smelled of weak coffee and toast, a ritual Ethan maintained no matter how empty the fridge felt or how tight the week had been. It was his way of saying, we still live. We still start the day. He stood by the small kitchen window watching the snow outside slowly turn to slush. It was going to be a long day of phone calls and emergency heater repairs. The storm had knocked out power across half the town. Behind him, the couch shifted with a rustle. Mira sat up slowly, blinking against the daylight pouring in through the curtains. Her hair was tousled, falling over her face in uneven strands. She looked around as if unsure where she was then remembered. And she froze. It's okay, Ethan said gently, turning from the sink. You're safe here. Mira didn't speak at first. Her eyes darted around the room like she was searching for escape routes. The coffee mug in Ethan's hand seemed to calm her. Something familiar. Ordinary. Did you sleep okay? He asked. She nodded slightly, still clutching the throw blanket around her thin shoulders. You hungry again? I have eggs, not much else. I'm fine, she whispered. Ethan studied her a moment. There was something haunted about her more than just fear. It was the stillness, the way she sat too carefully, like someone taught never to take up space. He knew that posture. Knew the way people flinched at kindness when they'd been denied it too long. Lily skipped out of her room already dressed in a mismatched outfit of pink leggings and a sparkly sweater. Her hair was a tangle of curls Ethan had forgotten to comb the night before, but her smile was radiant. Hi, Mira, she chirped, plopping onto the arm of the couch beside her. Mira startled slightly but managed a small smile. Hi. You want to see my book? Lily asked eagerly. It's about animals that survived the snow. There's this one bird that can fly even in a blizzard. Ethan opened his mouth to step in, but Mira surprised him by nodding. Sure. As Lily dashed off to grab her book, Ethan crouched beside the couch and lowered his voice. She's a talker, and she doesn't forget kindness. Mira looked at him. Her eyes flickered gratitude, maybe, or exhaustion. You don't have to tell me anything, Ethan said carefully. But if someone's looking for you, if you're in trouble, I can help. Her jaw tightened. I don't want help, she said, voice low. I just need time. Just one more night. Then I'll go. You can stay longer than that, Ethan offered. We don't have much, but what we have, we share. Mira looked away, her hands knotted in the blanket. Where are your parents? Mira. She flinched. Don't ask me that. Ethan straightened slowly, sensing the invisible wall she had just thrown up between them. Not anger. Fear. Lily returned with her book and flopped down beside Mira, opening it excitedly. As the two sat together, flipping through pages and giggling at the snowshoe hare with comically large feet, Ethan watched something shift in Mira's posture. Her shoulders loosened. Her hand stopped trembling. It wasn't just warmth she needed, it was safety, trust, home. Later that day, Ethan stood in line at the hardware store picking up a replacement valve for a client's busted water heater. The store TV mounted in the corner played local news. A segment caught his eye, a woman with poised elegance sitting stiffly behind a podium surrounded by microphones. Vivian Cross, CEO of Crosstech, a name that had graced Forbes and financial columns for years. But this segment wasn't about stock prices. Ethan turned up the volume just a touch. 3 years since her daughter Amelia disappeared outside a music hall in Chicago. No credible leads have surfaced since, but Vivian Cross believes new information may be coming. The camera cut to a still image of a bright-eyed girl, long chestnut hair, dimpled smile. The name beneath Amelia Claire Cross, age 13 at disappearance, age 16 now. Ethan's stomach dropped. She looked just like Mira. He shook the thought away. No, it couldn't be. This was a small town. Runaways, yes. Troubled teens, maybe. But that girl. Still, as he drove home later with the part tucked beside him on the seat, the image wouldn't leave his mind. That evening, Ethan returned to the apartment to find Lily curled up beside Mira on the floor, drawing with crayons. Mira had tied her hair back with one of Lily's scrunchies. The two looked like sisters. "Hey," Ethan greeted softly, setting his toolbox down. Mira stood quickly brushing invisible crumbs from her borrowed jeans. "I was going to make grilled cheese," she said, almost apologetically. "Hope that's okay. Lily said you had bread and butter." Ethan blinked, surprised. It's more than okay. Something had changed in her. A softening. Not complete, but enough to let light in. As they sat down for dinner, just 3 paper plates, some sandwiches, and a flickering candle for backup light in case the power failed again, Ethan found himself watching Mira more closely. She laughed at Lily's jokes. She ate like she hadn't in days. And when she thought no one was looking, she took out something from her pocket, a small oval locket, and stared at it for a long moment before slipping it quietly away. He caught a glimpse of initials etched into the gold. AC. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep in her room and Mira curled again on the couch, Ethan stood by the window watching the snow melt under the dim glow of the street lamp. The name she gave Mira might not be her real one. But whatever her truth was, it was wrapped in fear and pain and silence. He didn't know what lay ahead. But one thing was certain. This girl didn't just need shelter. She needed someone to believe in her. And for reasons he couldn't yet explain, Ethan Walker was willing to be that someone. The morning broke gray and windless, the kind of silence that follows a storm, uneasy, expectant. Ethan stirred awake on the living room floor, wrapped in an old quilt beside the couch. He sat up slowly, his back reminding him he wasn't as young as he used to be. The couch above him was empty, still indented from where Mira had slept. Panic gripped him for half a second. Then he heard soft movement in the kitchen. He stood and padded toward the sound. Mira stood at the sink barefoot, her frame slightly hunched in one of his old sweatshirts. She was quietly washing 2 mugs steam from the water fogging the nearby window. Her hair was still damp from a shower. She didn't hear him come in. "You don't have to do that," Ethan said softly. She jumped, nearly dropping a mug. "I'm sorry. I just thought I should help." "You already have," he replied. "Lily hasn't stopped smiling since you got here." A faint smile touched Mira's lips, then disappeared. She dried the mugs and placed them on the drying rack like someone who'd been taught to do it a very long time ago. Ethan poured a cup of coffee and motioned toward the small dining table. "Sit with me." She hesitated, then obeyed. The early light made her look paler than usual. Dark circles still haunted her eyes. As they sat across from each other in the quiet, Ethan tried again. "You sleep okay?" "I dreamed about water," she said absently. Eyes drifting. Freezing water, like I was falling into it. "You're safe now," he said gently. "No one's going to hurt you here." Mira looked up at him, and for a moment her mask slipped. Pain lived behind her eyes. Old pain. Deep. She opened her mouth to speak, but a knock at the door interrupted. It was Lily, back from her friend's apartment 2 doors down. She'd gone there early to trade stickers with another girl before school. "Daddy, can I watch cartoons before I get dressed?" Ethan nodded. "Just a few minutes." She darted into the living room and clicked on the dusty old TV. The local channel buzzed to life with its usual morning mix, weather, community events, school closings. Then the anchor woman's voice shifted in tone. "We begin this hour with a new development in the high-profile case of Amelia Claire Cross, the missing daughter of Crosstech CEO Vivian Cross. The girl, now 16, disappeared 3 years ago while attending a benefit concert in Chicago." Ethan turned toward the screen, his heart skipping a beat. A photo appeared. Amelia, age 13. Smiling eyes, bright hair brushed to a shine. She looked untouched by the world. Ethan glanced sideways. Mira had frozen. The resemblance was no longer a question. It was certainty. The camera shifted to a press conference. Vivian Cross, elegant and composed despite the weight of loss, stood behind a cluster of microphones. "If anyone sees a girl they believe might be my daughter, please contact local authorities. Amelia has a birthmark behind her left ear and a small scar above her right eyebrow. She may not go by her real name." Mira stood up abruptly, knocking her chair backward. Ethan instinctively caught it before it hit the ground. "Mira." "I have to go," she whispered. "I can't stay." "Mira, wait." But she was already pacing toward the door. He stepped in front of it, not blocking, just grounding, calm. "I'm not going to turn you in," he said. "I'm not asking you anything you're not ready to tell, but you don't have to run from us." "You don't understand," she hissed, eyes glistening. "If they find me, I go back to that life, to that cage. I wasn't kidnapped by strangers, Ethan. I ran. I ran because home was worse." The words stopped him cold. Behind them, the news anchor's voice carried on, talking about Vivian's foundation search parties and the millions spent on investigators. Mira was trembling. Ethan took a slow step forward. "You're safe here. You're not invisible to me, Mira, but you're not a headline either. You're just a kid who deserves peace." Mira pressed her hands to her face. Her voice cracked. "I don't even know who I am anymore. Not really. I don't know if Amelia is me, or just someone I used to pretend to be." Silence hung between them. Then Lily walked up holding her drawing. "I made this for you," she said softly. She handed Mira a piece of paper, a crayon sketch of 3 stick figures, a man, a little girl, and a taller girl with long hair. They were holding hands, standing in front of a small house with smoke curling from the chimney. Mira stared at it, speechless. "That's us," Lily explained. "Me, Daddy, and you. I gave you a flower dress. Hope that's okay." Mira looked at her, and something in her expression cracked wide open. It wasn't memory. It was longing. That afternoon, Ethan took Mira and Lily to the library under the guise of needing internet access. As Lily wandered off toward the children's section, Mira sat beside Ethan at a computer terminal, fidgeting with the sleeves of her hoodie. "You don't have to read it if you're not ready," he said, pulling up a cached article on Amelia Cross's disappearance. But she leaned in, eyes scanning the words. It was all there, news clippings, timelines, speculation. Vivian Cross's face was in nearly every article. Photos of lavish fundraisers, interviews about the company. One image stopped Mira cold, a family portrait taken the year before the disappearance. Vivian. Amelia. No father. "That's the house I grew up in," Mira said suddenly. Ethan turned. "You remember it?" She nodded. "I remember the windows. How I used to press my face to the glass and pretend I lived somewhere else." He let that sink in. "You don't have to go back to what hurt you," he said quietly. "But you also don't have to carry it alone." Mira looked at him. Really looked. You believe me? I believe what you're brave enough to say. She closed her eyes, breathing shakily. I need to find out who I really am. But I don't want to do it without Lily. Or you. Ethan nodded. Then we'll figure it out. Together. Outside, the sky had begun to clear. The town once buried in snow was thawing. Slowly, carefully, just like the girl in his care. The sky had turned to a soft amber haze by the time they returned home, the last blush of sunset hanging low behind the bare trees. The storm had passed, leaving behind cracked sidewalks, damp porches, and a quiet that clung to the town like a secret. Ethan pulled into the driveway slowly, his thoughts spinning faster than the truck's tired engine. Mira hadn't said a word the whole ride back. She sat in the passenger seat, her fingers curled around the drawing Lily had made, now slightly creased at the corners. In the back, Lily hummed softly, oblivious to the weight in the air. When they entered the apartment, Mira moved to the couch wordlessly. She folded the drawing and tucked it into her backpack, almost like she was trying to hide it away, not from view, but from hope. Ethan watched her for a moment, then made 2 mugs of cocoa, the real kind, not the watered-down packets. He handed one to her without speaking, and sat in the chair across from her. "You don't have to talk," he said, voice low. "But if you want to, I'll listen." Mira stared into the cocoa for a long moment. Then softly, "I ran away the night of the charity concert." Ethan didn't move. "I wasn't taken like the papers say." She continued, "I slipped out the back of the theater. No cameras caught it. The staff thought I was in the restroom. It was easy." "Why?" Ethan asked gently. She looked up at him then, and for the first time he saw the full truth in her eyes. "Because I couldn't breathe in that life. I wasn't a daughter, I was a display. A project. Everything I said was rehearsed. Every smile was for show. And if I stepped out of line even a little, it was ice. That kind of silence you don't recover from." Ethan swallowed hard. Vivian Mira nodded. She wasn't cruel the way people think cruelty looks. She didn't hit. She didn't scream. But she made sure I knew I was a disappointment. Not polished enough. Not smart enough. Not cross enough. After my father died, it got worse. She set the mug down. Her hands trembled slightly. There were days I would sit in my room for hours just staring out the window, pretending I lived somewhere like this. Somewhere warm and loud and kind. And then, one day, I just walked away. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. And for 3 years, foster homes. Shelters. Sleeping in libraries when I could. I used the name Mira because it was close to Amelia, but not enough to trigger attention. I dyed my hair once. Cut it. Grew it back. Worked under the table cleaning jobs. She let out a shaky breath. I was doing okay in a way. I made it almost 2 years without anyone asking too many questions. But 3 weeks ago, I took a job cleaning at a motel outside Chicago. One of the guests recognized me from a photo. I panicked, ran again, got on a bus, ended up here. Ethan was silent for a long beat. Then, gently, "Why did you stop walking that night? Why this street?" Mira blinked. "There was a light in your window. Just one window. Warm, yellow light. Not the cold kind. And for a moment I thought, maybe I'd be safe if I made it to that door." He closed his eyes briefly. She added almost in a whisper, "I didn't expect kindness. I just hoped someone might not slam the door in my face." "You deserved more than that," Ethan said quietly. "You deserved to be a child, not a brand." Mira swallowed the lump rising in her throat. She hadn't cried, not in front of anyone in years. But something about this man, this home, this humble space filled with second-hand furniture and hand-drawn pictures on the fridge, it dismantled her defenses. He saw her. Not the heiress, not the runaway. Just her. A knock at the door made them both jump. Ethan stood cautiously glancing through the peephole. It was Mrs. Donnelly, the elderly neighbor from 3B, clutching a basket. He opened the door with a forced smile. "Evening, Ruth. You're running low again, aren't you?" she said without preamble. "I saw you bringing in that skinny girl the other night. Thought I'd drop off some chili. Warms the bones." She peered past him and spotted Mira. "Well, there she is. Poor thing looks like a whisper." Mira tried to smile. "She's a friend of Lily's," Ethan said a practiced line. Mrs. Donnelly raised an eyebrow but didn't pry. She handed over the basket and tapped his chest with a gloved finger. "You're a good man, Ethan Walker. Not many would open their doors these days." As she walked away, Ethan closed the door and turned to Mira. "You okay?" She nodded. Then something flickered in her eyes. Confusion. Surprise. "That's what it's like here?" she asked. "People just bring chili and don't ask questions." He chuckled. "That's Mrs. Donnelly. She's the town's unofficial grandmother. Gossips like a news anchor, but her heart's made of caramel." Mira laughed softly. It was the first real sound of joy she'd made since arriving. They sat down again, sharing bowls of chili Lily, bouncing between bites, telling a story about a squirrel outside school that had tried to steal someone's sandwich. Mira listened with a quiet smile. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Mira stood by the window staring into the night. Ethan walked up beside her. "I don't know what's going to happen next," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "But I think I want to find out. Not alone." "You won't have to," he said. She looked at him. The porch light outside flickered as snow began to fall again, soft as breath. And for the first time in years, Amelia Cross didn't feel like she was running. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she was starting to arrive. Ethan's phone rang before dawn. The harsh buzz pierced the stillness of the apartment, jolting him upright on the living room floor. He blinked against the dim light filtering through the kitchen blinds, fumbling for the phone vibrating beside a half-folded blanket. "Ethan Walker," he mumbled, still groggy. "Mr. Walker, this is Deputy Briggs from the County Sheriff's Office. Sorry to call early, but we're reaching out to residents in your area. There was a possible sighting related to an open missing persons case. Your vehicle was logged by a roadside camera near Highway 32 3 nights ago. You happen to recall anything unusual?" Ethan's blood chilled. I drive that route often for jobs," he said carefully. "What's the case?" "Looking for a teenage girl. Possible match to Amelia Cross, the Crosstech heiress. She's been missing for 3 years. We've got new leads and it's all hands on deck." Ethan swallowed. "You think she's around here?" "Could be. If you spot anyone new in the area, or if anything feels off, let us know. Confidential tips are welcome." "I understand," Ethan said. "I'll keep an eye out." As he ended the call, his hand trembled. Behind him, Mira stood in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself, Lily's oversized sweatshirt drowning her small frame. She'd heard enough. "They're looking for me," she said, her voice barely audible. Ethan nodded. "You're not turning me in." "No," he said simply, "but we need to be smart." Mira crossed the room slowly, barefoot, her eyes wide with panic. "They have cameras, license plates. What if they trace you?" "They already did," Ethan replied. "They just don't know who you are. Not yet." She sat down at the kitchen table, knees bouncing. "What do I do, Ethan? I can't go back. You saw the news. They'll put me back in that house. I'll disappear again, just in a bigger mansion." He sat beside her, elbows on the table, voice steady. "You don't have to go back if you can prove you were in danger. That you left for a reason." "No one believes kids like me," she whispered. "They believe money. And my mother. She's too powerful. She'll put on the tears for the cameras and tell the world I was lost and scared. That she forgives me." She looked at him, then her eyes shining with rage and grief. "She won't say a word about the years she ignored me. Or the fact that I used to sleep in the hallway just to feel noticed." Ethan's heart clenched. Before he could speak, a knock rattled the door. They froze. Ethan walked to the door and checked the peephole. A uniform. Not police. Postal. He exhaled. "It's just the mail," he said, trying to smile. But Mira didn't move. She stayed seated, trembling slightly, staring into space. Ethan walked over and knelt beside her. "You're not alone anymore. We'll take this one step at a time. But what if the next step is losing everything she asked? Then we take the one after that," he said gently. "Together." Later that afternoon, Ethan headed to a client's house, a busted water heater on the edge of town. He left Lily at school and Mira at the apartment with clear instructions not to open the door for anyone. She nodded, but said little, curling up with Lily's crayons and an old sketchbook. The heater job took longer than expected. Frozen pipes, rusted bolts. While crouching under the client's sink, his phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail from an unknown number. He stepped outside to listen. "Mr. Walker, my name is Daniel Marks. I'm an independent journalist. I received an anonymous tip that Amelia Cross might be hiding in your town. The lead came through a forum that tracks runaways and false news narratives. I don't want to stir up trouble, but if you know anything, please call me back. I believe her story needs to be heard truthfully." Ethan stared at the phone. The world wasn't just looking for Mira. They were hunting her with motives of their own. Not all of them pure. Back at the apartment, Mira flipped through the news channels on mute. Each station rehashed the same talking points. Vivian Cross's emotional plea, grainy photos from years ago, blurred clips of potential Amelia sightings that looked nothing like her. One clip showed a woman speaking to reporters outside a private school. She was always a quiet girl, sweet, never made waves. But I heard the pressure at home was a lot. Mira stared at the screen. Someone knew. Someone else had seen it. She flipped to another channel. This time, it wasn't just speculation. It was a newscast with a banner. Former Crosstech employee claims Amelia's disappearance was inevitable. A grainy interview followed, voice disguised, face blurred. She was more of a mascot than a daughter. No kid should live like that. Mira's hands clenched the edge of the couch. Outside the window, snow began to fall again. But for the first time, she didn't feel like hiding. When Ethan returned home, she met him at the door. "I need to tell my story," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "To who?" "To someone who will actually listen. Someone who won't twist it. That journalist who called you, maybe he's different." Ethan nodded slowly. "It's your choice. But once you go forward, there's no going back." "I know," she said, "but maybe that's okay." She looked over her shoulder at the drawing still pinned to the fridge, Lily's picture of the three of them. "I want to stop running. For me. For her." Ethan's voice was quiet. "Then let's find your voice again." That night, Mira sat at the kitchen table with a blank piece of paper. Ethan handed her a pen. "You don't have to write everything. Just start." She nodded and bent over the paper, and with a deep breath she wrote, "My name is Amelia Claire Cross. I wasn't kidnapped. I left. And this is why." The storm outside gathered again, but this time she wasn't afraid of it. The glass walls of the conference hall gleamed beneath the morning sun, overlooking the frosted skyline of Chicago. A row of sleek microphones lined the podium like silent sentinels. Cameras flashed. Reporters murmured behind cupped hands. Security stood at full alert near the exit's, earpieces glinting under tailored coats. Vivian Cross entered the room to a wave of clicks and whispers. Impeccably dressed in a steel-gray blazer, her posture was flawless, chin slightly lifted, a portrait of composure. But behind the crisp professionalism was something harder to ignore. Grief, aged and tightly wrapped in control. Her eyes, lined with fatigue and unspoken desperation, betrayed a mother whose time was running out. She adjusted the microphone. "I'd like to thank you all for coming." She began, her voice smooth but deliberate, like every syllable had been carved from stone. 3 years ago, my daughter Amelia Claire Cross vanished, and for 3 years I have searched, hoped, and grieved every single day. A photo of Amelia at age 13 flickered on the screen behind her bright smile head, tilted slightly, a glittering piano in the background. She was last seen wearing a blue dress and black coat. She had a small scar above her right eyebrow and a birthmark behind her left ear. And though she may no longer resemble the girl in this photo, I am certain as any mother would be that she's still out there. Vivian paused, letting the silence hang just long enough. I'm offering a renewed reward, $5 million for credible information leading to her return. Cameras flashed, reporters scrambled for questions. But Vivian raised her hand calmly. No further statements today. She stepped away from the podium, ignoring the sudden swell of noise behind her. Outside the hall, a woman approached with a phone pressed to her ear. "Ma'am," she whispered, "we may have something." A tip came in through an anonymous channel. "Small town, north of here. Preliminary details. Might be credible." Vivian didn't respond immediately. Her eyes drifted to the skyline, to the falling snow catching on the glass. "Schedule the jet," she said. "I want to see it myself." Back in the apartment, Mira sat on the floor surrounded by torn notebook pages and doodles Lily had made to help with inspiration. The little girl knelt beside her, determinedly coloring a rainbow over Mira's name in block letters. "Do you think your mom will cry when she sees you?" Lily asked innocently. Mira hesitated. "I don't know." "She should," Lily said firmly. "If she loves you." Mira didn't respond. Her fingers ran along the spine of a worn photo album Ethan had left nearby Lily's baby pictures, birthdays, school projects. Love was woven into the pages of that album in ways her own family had never understood. There were no nannies here, no private tutors, or staged holiday cards, just messy faces, crayon confessions, and real raw life. Ethan walked in coat dusted with snow. He caught the look on Mira's face and sat beside her. "Something on your mind." She looked up. "Do you think she'll actually come?" "My mom. If she thinks she's found you," he said, "she'll come. But the real question is, are you ready to face her?" Mira sat back. "Part of me wants to run again, but another part, I want her to see me now. Not the version she crafted. Me." Ethan nodded. "Then maybe it's time you tell your story before someone else tells it for you." That evening, Mira agreed to meet with the journalist Ethan had spoken to Daniel Marks. They arranged a discreet visit at a neutral spot, the town's closed library, after hours, courtesy of Ethan's old friend who kept the keys. Daniel was in his late 40s, weathered by years of chasing truths people wanted buried. He carried a small recorder and a kind smile. No camera crew, no press badge. "I'm not here to exploit you," he said as they sat across from one another. "I've seen too many stories twisted by headlines. I'd rather just listen." Mira held the recorder in her hands for a long moment, then pressed the red button. "My name is Amelia Claire Cross," she began, voice trembling but clear. "I disappeared 3 years ago. But not because someone took me. I ran away. I ran because the life I was living was slowly erasing who I was." She paused, her fingers tightening around the recorder. "My mother is powerful. She's brilliant. But behind closed doors, I was an accessory, not a daughter. My days were scheduled to the second. My choices didn't exist. And when I made mistakes or just wanted to be normal, it was met with silence. Not anger, just distance. That hurts worse." Daniel said nothing. He let the silence breathe. "I don't want money," Mira continued. "I don't want revenge. I want to be free to live a life that belongs to me. And I want the world to know that kindness saved me. A couch in a stranger's living room saved me more than any mansion ever did." She clicked off the recorder. Daniel sat back, visibly moved. "May I publish this exactly as you said it?" Mira looked to Ethan, who nodded gently. "Yes," she said. "But don't make it a scandal. Make it human." He smiled. "That's the only kind worth telling." That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She sat by the window in the dim light, watching the street below. Snow drifted past the lampposts. A car rolled by and parked across the street, sleek black, clearly not from town. She didn't have to guess. Ethan stepped beside her. "She's here, isn't she?" Mira nodded. "She's always 10 steps ahead. You don't have to face her tonight." Mira stood exhaling deeply. "No, but I'm not the same girl who ran away." As she walked toward the bedroom to rest before morning, Ethan called softly after her. "No matter how this ends, you've already won something back." She turned. "What yourself?" And in the hush of that winter night, as the world outside shifted beneath a thin veil of snow, Mira Amelia closed her eyes, knowing that for the first time she wouldn't be running when morning came. She would be seen. The air was still the next morning. Not silent, but tense like a breath being held. Ethan rose, early muscles stiff from the floor again, and wandered into the kitchen. The apartment was unusually quiet. Lily was still asleep, her door half closed. But the living room was empty. The couch, blanket folded, pillow untouched, and Mira gone. His heart stuttered. "Mira," he called already, striding toward the bathroom. Empty. Kitchen. Nothing. Her backpack gone. The front door locked but not deadbolted as he always left it. A folded note sat on the kitchen table. His hands shook as he opened it. "I'm sorry, Ethan. You gave me more than I deserved. That's why I can't risk bringing trouble to your door. I need to face this alone. Thank you for everything." Ethan stared at the note for a long time. His mouth was dry. He reread it, willing it to change, but she was gone. He grabbed his jacket keys already in hand. The bus station was his first stop. No one matching Mira's description had boarded this morning. He checked the park next, then the library, then circled back to Main Street, his eyes scanning every face, every sidewalk. Each passing minute carved deeper into his chest. By the time he returned home, Lily was awake, sitting on the couch, rubbing her eyes. "Where's Mira?" she asked, clutching her stuffed bear. Ethan didn't answer right away. She stared at him. "Daddy." "She left, sweetheart," he said quietly. "She thought it was the best way to keep us safe." Lily's face crumpled, "But she said we were family." "I know," Ethan whispered, gathering her into his arms. "I know." That afternoon, he called Deputy Briggs. "I need to report something," he said. "Not a crime. A concern. A girl. Her name is, well, she goes by Mira. But I think she's the one everyone's looking for." The line went quiet. "You sure?" "I've been sure for a while. The deputy promised to send someone over." Ethan hung up and sat down, staring at the folded note again. But before the deputy arrived, the phone rang. This time, it was the hospital. "Mr. Walker, we found your number in a folded slip of paper inside a coat pocket. A girl, teenage hypothermic, was brought in by a good Samaritan who found her unconscious behind the old diner near the train station. She's stable now." Ethan's legs nearly gave out. "Is she awake?" he asked. "Just barely." But she kept saying one name, over and over. What name? Lily. He reached the hospital in under 10 minutes, barely remembering the drive. The nurse guided him through the emergency wing and pulled back the curtain to reveal the narrow bed. Mira lay there, face-paled IV in her arm, oxygen gently hissing beside her. Her lips were cracked, eyes closed, but her hand twitched when he said her name. "Mira." "I'm here." Her eyes fluttered open slowly. "Ethan." "Don't ever do that again," he said, his voice breaking. "You don't run from family. Not anymore." "I was scared," she whispered. "I know. But don't go alone. Not anymore." A nurse stepped in, clipboard in hand. "There's someone here to see her," she said. "A woman." Ethan turned slowly. Vivian Cross stood in the hallway, immaculate as always. But this time the expression on her face wasn't one of poise. It was something Ethan hadn't expected. It was heartbreak. The nurse gestured her forward. Vivian stepped into the room, her heels silent against the tile. Mira's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. "Hi, Amelia," Vivian said, voice barely above a whisper. Mira didn't respond. Vivian looked at Ethan. "You're the man who sheltered her." I'm the man who saw her, he replied. Vivian nodded as if she deserved that. I've searched for you every day, she said to her daughter. No, Mira rasped. You searched for the version of me you lost, not me. Vivian looked stricken, but she didn't argue. I didn't know how to love you, right? She said. I controlled everything because I thought that would keep you safe. But I see now. It kept you caged. A pause. Then, softly, I'm sorry. Tears slipped silently down Mira's cheeks. I don't want to go back, she said. You don't have to, Vivian replied, voice cracking. I don't deserve to make that demand. But I want to start again. I'll go slow. I'll earn your trust this time. Ethan took a step back, letting the moment belong to them. But Mira's eyes found him. I don't want to lose them either, she whispered. Vivian looked at Ethan, then back at her daughter. Then we don't lose anyone, she said. We build something new, if they'll let us. Outside the hospital, snow began to fall again. But this time it wasn't heavy or sharp. It was soft, like lace unraveling in the sky. And as Ethan stepped out into it, Mira beside him in a wheelchair, Vivian pushing gently Lily, running ahead with her arms spread wide, he realized something profound. Kindness didn't always prevent storms, but it could guide someone home. The hospital room was filled with winter light. Soft golden beams slipped through the half-drawn blinds, spilling warmth across Mira's pale face. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and warm linen. Machines beeped steadily in the background, but the atmosphere was no longer tense. It was tender, suspended in a moment that felt like the calm after a long, merciless storm. Vivian Cross sat by the window, not in a power suit, not behind a podium, but in a soft navy cardigan, her hair pulled back loosely. Her phone, usually an extension of her hand, remained untouched on the windowsill. Mira Amelia sat upright in bed, propped by pillows, a light hospital blanket pulled to her waist. Her fingers absently traced the stitching on the hem as if anchoring herself in the moment. Ethan stood beside her with Lily nestled at his side, holding a small get-well card she'd drawn with hearts and stick figures. The silence in the room wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick with meaning. 3 lives stitched together by chance, now trying to figure out if they could become something more. Vivian finally broke the silence. The doctors say you can be discharged tomorrow. Mira nodded slowly but didn't speak. Vivian swallowed. They said you were severely hypothermic when they found you. If that man hadn't stopped... Mira interrupted gently. I left, so I wouldn't bring danger to Ethan and Lily. Ethan's voice was quiet. You are never the danger. What's chasing you might be but you. You're a kid with a good heart. Mira's eyes glistened. I didn't know how to let people protect me, she admitted. I thought strength meant staying silent. Running. Vivian's voice cracked. That's my fault. Amelia looked over at her mother, really looked and saw for the first time in a long while not the executive, not the figure behind the company or the media image, but a woman with wrinkles near her eyes and pain in her hands from gripping things too tightly. You were raised to be strong, Amelia said. But I wasn't. I was just trying to be seen. And when I wasn't, I disappeared. Vivian's breath hitched, and for a long second she said nothing. I didn't know how to be a mother, she finally whispered. I thought providing meant loving. I never realized that presence mattered more than any mansion or tutor. Amelia's shoulders trembled, and Ethan gently reached over and rested a hand over hers. Lily leaned forward, earnest and wide-eyed. Can we still be like a family, even if it's all messy? Everyone turned to her. Vivian blinked, visibly stunned by the child's raw honesty. Amelia let out a small broken laugh. I think messy might be exactly what we need. The discharge process was quiet but efficient. Vivian, now visibly softened, signed the forms without a flurry of assistance. When they reached the parking lot, her sleek black sedan sat idling nearby. Vivian walked ahead and opened the passenger door. But Amelia didn't move. She turned to Ethan. I want you to drive me home, to wherever home is now." Ethan hesitated. "You sure?" She nodded. "I've spent enough time in silent cars with tinted windows." Vivian didn't argue. She handed Ethan the hospital bag with a surprising lack of protest and said, "I'll follow." As they drove through the snow-dusted streets of the small town, Amelia rolled the window down halfway and let the wind kiss her face. She looked at Lily, humming beside her in the back seat, and smiled. "You know what's weird?" she said softly. "I've never felt more like Amelia than I do right now. Not at a gala. Not in a press photo. Here." Ethan didn't say much. He didn't have to. When they arrived back at the apartment, Amelia stepped inside like someone returning to a place that had already etched itself into her memory. The couch, the peeling wallpaper, the faint scent of cinnamon from Lily's air freshener. It was humble, but it was real. Vivian stepped in behind her eyes, scanning the room slowly. She didn't say, "This is where you were." She didn't scoff at the tiny kitchen, the outdated heater, or the second-hand bookshelf. She looked at Ethan. "I understand why she stayed," she said simply. "Thank you for not treating her like a headline." Ethan gave a respectful nod. She never was. Later that evening, the four of them sat around the small kitchen table eating grilled cheese sandwiches and canned tomato soup. The conversation was awkward at first. Vivian wasn't used to small talk, and Lily didn't know when to stop. But somehow it worked. At one point, Lily asked, "Do you have a favorite color?" Amelia Vivian started to answer out of habit, but Amelia raised her hand with a smile. "I like yellow. Bright sunshine yellow." Vivian looked surprised. "You used to say blue. I used to say a lot of things to make you smile." Amelia said, not with anger, but truth. Vivian lowered her eyes. Lily beamed. "Yellow is my favorite, too." They high-fived, and the room softened. As the night settled in, Vivian prepared to leave. She stood in the doorway, hesitant. "I'm staying at the inn across the street," she said to Amelia. "I'll be here as long as you want me to be, and not a minute longer than you're ready." Amelia stepped forward unsure, then surprised herself by hugging her mother not tightly, not long, but with sincerity. Vivian's arms trembled as she returned it. As the door clicked shut behind her, Amelia turned to Ethan and Lily. I want to stay here. For now." Ethan smiled. "The couch is still yours." "I'd like to share Lily's room," she added, "if she doesn't mind." Lily jumped up. "I was hoping for a roommate." And as they disappeared into the back room giggling, Ethan stood alone in the living room for a moment, staring at the empty couch. 3 weeks ago, it had just been furniture. Now it was part of a miracle. Winter hung on like a whispered secret, reluctant to leave. Outside, the sidewalks glistened with the remnants of slush, and icicles clung to gutters like glass teardrops. But inside Ethan's modest apartment, something had changed. Something invisible, but undeniable. There was warmth. Not just from the rickety heater that groaned through the night or the extra fleece blanket Vivian had mailed after her third visit, but from laughter, from the scent of pancakes on Saturday mornings, from the soft way Amelia said Lily's name now like it meant safety, like it meant home. Amelia had been living there for 3 weeks. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was healing. She slept on a cot beside Lily's bed, now their whispered conversations drifting through the walls at night. She helped make dinner, folded laundry, and even walked with Ethan to his repair jobs occasionally. There was a steadiness to her now. No longer the trembling girl who begged not to be found, but someone learning to be known. One morning, Ethan entered the living room to find her curled on the couch with a mug of tea, staring at the empty space where a framed photo used to hang. "You moved it," she said. He blinked. "What?" "The photo. The one of you and Lily at the lake." "Oh," Ethan said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah. The frame cracked. I'm fixing it." She looked at him over the mug. "You do that a lot." "Fix things." She nodded. He smiled. "Old habits." A pause. "I used to think I was broken," she said, her voice quiet. "But maybe I was just waiting to be seen." Ethan didn't respond right away. Instead, he walked to the hallway closet, rummaged through a small box, and pulled something out. It was a folded blanket, blue plaid, frayed at the corners. "This was the first blanket I gave you," he said. "That night, on the couch." She stared at it, unmoving. "I almost didn't stop," he admitted. "I was tired. Cold. I saw you and thought, don't get involved. But then I thought about what Lily would say if she found out. She would have never forgiven me." A smile tugged at her lips. "She's braver than all of us." Ethan nodded. "She is." Amelia ran her hand over the soft fabric eyes, welling. "You gave me this before you knew my name, before you knew anything about me." "I didn't need to know," Ethan said gently. "You were cold. That was enough." She blinked fast, swallowed hard. It was the first time in years I felt like someone saw me without conditions. He cleared his throat. "Funny thing is, I think you saw us too. You reminded me I still had kindness in me I'd forgotten how to use." They sat in silence for a while, the kind that didn't require filling. Then Amelia looked up. "Do you believe in second chances?" Ethan smiled. "I believe in earned chances, and you've done more than earn yours." She nodded slowly, then said, "There's something I want to do. For you." That afternoon, Ethan returned home from a repair job to find Vivian standing in the apartment parking lot in a wool coat and flat shoes, not her usual appearance. She held a small envelope in one hand and a hesitant look on her face. "I'm not here to disrupt anything," she said as he approached. I was told to meet you here, by my daughter." Ethan raised an eyebrow. Together they climbed the stairs. When he opened the door, he stopped. Inside the apartment stood Amelia and Lily. The furniture had been rearranged. A clean sheet covered the couch. A handmade paper sign hung above it. The couch that started everything. Amelia stepped forward and handed Ethan a printed certificate inside a simple black frame. At the top it read, "Donation, in honor of Ethan Walker, builder of safe spaces to the Harmony Center for Runaway Youth. Opening spring, 2025. Ethan looked from the certificate to Amelia. "I used the reward money," she said. "Not all of it, but enough. The rest is going into a trust for the center. A place where kids like me don't have to freeze on porches. A place with couches, and warm blankets, and people who listen." Ethan stared at the paper, speechless. Vivian cleared her throat, stepping forward. "She told me the idea last week. Said it was the only way the money would mean something." "It does," Ethan said, his voice rough. "It means everything." He sat down on the couch, and stared at the space that had once been just a patch of worn fabric, but now held the weight of something sacred. Amelia sat beside him. "This was never just a couch," she said. "It was a door. You opened it, and my life changed." He looked at her. "You changed it," he said. "I just gave you a place to begin." Lily climbed onto his lap, holding his arm tightly. "Can we go see the center when it opens?" Amelia smiled. "You'll cut the ribbon." Lily. Vivian looked around the room, her eyes softer than they'd ever been. "I spent 3 years trying to rescue my daughter with press releases and private investigators," she said. "But she was saved by a couch and a stranger who refused to walk away." Ethan shook his head. "I wasn't a stranger for long. And in that room, with snow beginning to fall softly again outside a family that didn't match on paper, sat close enough to prove they didn't have to. Because sometimes the most powerful acts of love begin in silence, with a couch, a blanket, and a heart that says, 'Stay.'" The town awoke beneath a fresh blanket of snow. It was the kind of snowfall that softened the edges of everything: storefronts, sidewalks, mailboxes, wrapping the world in a hush. From Ethan's apartment window, the street looked like a memory. Clean, quiet, holding its breath. Inside, the kitchen buzzed with warmth and motion. The toaster popped. Bacon sizzled. Lily twirled in fuzzy socks to Christmas music that played faintly on the radio, even though it was well past New Year's. And at the table, Ethan sat beside Amelia, who was practicing a short speech for the ribbon cutting of the Harmony Center. She spoke each word slowly, deliberately, her voice gaining confidence with every line. "I want to thank everyone who believed I was worth saving, even when I didn't." She glanced up, cheeks pink. "Too much." Ethan shook his head. "No, it's perfect. It's honest." Amelia took a deep breath, then tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've never stood in front of people like that before, not without being someone they wanted me to be." Ethan smiled. "Then maybe it's time they meet the real you." Vivian arrived a few minutes later carrying boxes of fresh bagels and folders from the nonprofit team coordinating the center. Her visits had become more frequent, but less about checking in and more about showing up. She no longer looked like the woman who held press conferences. She wore jeans now. Sometimes even forgot her makeup. It suited her in a way she hadn't expected. "Traffic's already building near the center," she said as she placed the boxes on the table. "Press vans, local news, a few big names." Amelia winced. "I don't want it to feel like a publicity stunt." Vivian nodded. "It won't. Not with the way you've handled it. This is your story now." Amelia glanced at Ethan. "Our story." Lily piped up from under the table. "And mine, I get to wear my sparkly dress." Vivian laughed softly. "You do, sweetheart, and you'll outshine everyone." By noon, the four of them stood before the modest brick building on the far edge of town. It was simple, no frills, yet beautiful in its purpose. A new coat of paint, wide windows, a wooden sign above the double doors. The Harmony Center, a place to be found. A small crowd had gathered local leaders, reporters, a few of Ethan's old clients, and a group of teens from neighboring towns. The mayor gave a brief introduction applauding the project for changing the way we define rescue. Then she handed the microphone to Amelia. She stepped forward, the winter air nipping her cheeks, and glanced once at the folded speech in her pocket. Then she put it away. She looked up at the crowd, her voice clear. "My name is Amelia Claire Cross. I disappeared 3 years ago, but not in the way the world believed." A quiet ripple passed through the crowd. "I wasn't taken. I ran. I ran because I felt invisible in my own home, because I was tired of being perfect for cameras and empty in real life. I thought freedom meant escaping. But I was wrong." She paused. "Freedom found me on a snow-covered street when a man I didn't know opened his door and gave me the only couch he had." She looked toward Ethan and Lily standing together near the ribbon, their eyes glistening. "That act of kindness saved my life. Not because it fixed everything, but because it reminded me I was worth something, that I could be known, and still loved." She gestured to the center behind her. "This place is for kids like me. Kids who got lost because no one asked them how they were doing. Kids who don't need perfection, they just need presence." A beat of silence, then thunderous applause. Vivian, wiping tears behind her sunglasses, handed Amelia a pair of oversized ribbon-cutting scissors. Lily stood beside her, practically vibrating. "Ready?" Amelia asked. Lily grinned. "Let's do it together." They sliced through the red ribbon and the crowd erupted again. Inside, the center volunteers welcomed guests into a space filled with warmth couches, shelves of books, colorful murals painted by local teens, a wall of handwritten quotes. One stood out in bright letters. "Home is not a place, it's the people who open their doors." Ethan stood in the lobby taking it all in. He was approached by one of the board members, a woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes. "You must be Ethan Walker," she said, extending a hand. "I guess word travels," he chuckled, shaking it. "You're the man behind the couch," she said, "the one who started all of this." He looked around at the laughter, the warmth, the teens exploring rooms named things like Brave and Restore. "I just did what anyone decent would have done," he said. The woman smiled. "Then we need more decent people like you." That night, after the guests had gone and the cameras stopped flashing, Ethan, Amelia, Lily, and Vivian returned to the apartment. It felt smaller now, but not in a bad way. More like the way a favorite sweater fits tighter after you've grown, but you can't bear to let it go. They sat on the couch, all four of them squeezed together with paper plates of leftover cookies and mugs of cocoa. Lily leaned against Ethan's chest. "That place we opened. Do you think people will find family there?" Amelia smiled softly. "I think they already have." Vivian looked over. "You ready to move forward, Amelia? With everything therapy school may be visiting Chicago again." Amelia took a long sip of cocoa, then leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. "I'm ready for anything she said, as long as I don't have to do it alone." Ethan wrapped an arm around her. "You never will." Outside, snow fell again, slow, soft, and quiet. Not a storm, not an ending, but a beginning. Spring crept into town on the heels of a soft April rain, coaxing tulips from the frozen earth and washing the grime from rooftops and sidewalks. The harshness of winter had melted away not just in the weather, but in the people who had weathered it together. Inside Ethan's apartment, light poured through the open windows. The once dim space now buzzed with warmth and subtle color. Lily's school artwork taped to the fridge, potted herbs on the windowsill, and a photo of 4 smiling faces framed on the shelf above the couch. The very same couch that had once been just a threadbare place to rest now sat like a monument, quiet and sacred in its simplicity. Amelia folded a pair of jeans in the corner bedroom she now shared with Lily. A suitcase lay open on the bed, not because she was leaving for good, but because today was a milestone. "Everything fit?" Ethan asked, leaning against the doorframe. Amelia smiled. "Mostly. Vivian says they'll have everything else I need at the school." Ethan nodded, arms crossed. "You nervous?" She hesitated. "A little. It's a new start, new people. But I'm not scared like before." He smiled. "That's the difference between running and walking forward." Lily ran in, clutching a paper crown she'd made from yellow construction paper. "Wait. You can't leave until you wear this? You're the princess of the couch." Amelia laughed. "That's a very official title." "You earned it," Lily declared. "You're my hero." Amelia knelt down, letting Lily place the crown gently on her head. "No, Lily. You were mine." There was a quiet knock on the door. Vivian stepped in, not as a guest this time, but as someone who now moved with ease in this once unfamiliar space. Her outfit was simple jeans, a pale blouse, no earrings. Her power came from presence now, not perfection. "Car's packed," she said, her eyes lingering on Amelia. "Whenever you're ready." Amelia adjusted the crown, then turned to Ethan. "I'm only going for the semester. It's not goodbye." He nodded. "Doors always open." "More like never locked," she said, grinning. Vivian stepped forward, holding something behind her back. "I had this made," she said, handing over a small wrapped box. Inside was a polished metal plaque engraved with "To Ethan Walker, who opened his door and changed the world." Below it, in smaller script, "Kindness is not grand. It's quiet, ordinary, and life-saving." Ethan stared at it for a long moment. Words didn't come easily. He simply nodded, overcome. Vivian added softly, "The Harmony Center's dedicating its reading room to you. The kids will sit on couches, listen to stories, and remember that someone like you believed they were worth saving." Lily looked up wide-eyed. "Are they going to have cocoa too?" Vivian smiled. "Unlimited." They walked down together to the car. The sky was a pale blue clouds drifting like promises. As they reached the sidewalk, neighbors waved. One even called out, "We're proud of you, Amelia." Amelia waved back, stunned. "They know," Ethan chuckled. "They've always known. They just waited for you to know it too." She hugged Lily tightly, whispering something that made the little girl nod solemnly and promise pinky swear. Then she turned to Ethan. Their hug was quieter, longer, no words. Just trust passed between arms. "Take care of yourself, sunshine," he whispered. "You too," she said. "And thank you for seeing me." She climbed into the car. Vivian gave Ethan a final nod, one that carried gratitude and something like friendship, and they drove away. But this time Amelia didn't look back out of fear. She looked forward with hope. Weeks passed. Letters came. Then video calls. Then packages. Ethan's life remained simple, fixing heaters, replacing faucets, coaching Lily's soccer team. But the simplicity now had depth. One Saturday, Lily stood on stage at the school's spring showcase. The auditorium buzzed with applause as students recited poems and stories they had written. When it was Lily's turn, she stepped to the microphone in her sparkly dress and yellow crown. My story is called The Couch That Found a Girl. Ethan sat straighter in his chair. She began. Once there was a couch. It was old and squeaky and didn't match anything. But one day a girl sat on it who had nowhere else to go. The couch didn't care. It gave her a place to rest. And then it gave her a family. The audience went silent. The girl thought she was lost, but the couch didn't see lost things. It only saw someone worth keeping. And that's how we became a family, not by matching, but by choosing. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. When Lily finished, she looked directly at him and smiled. Later that night, as they returned home, Lily climbed onto the couch and curled up under a soft blue plaid blanket. Ethan sat beside her, holding a cup of cocoa in one hand and the plaque in the other. The apartment was quiet. Outside, a breeze carried the scent of earth and distant blossoms. Dad Lily whispered, "Yeah, do you think couches remember people?" He looked down at her, tucking the blanket under her chin. "I think the good ones do." She smiled, eyes drifting closed, and Ethan leaned back, letting the silence hold him, not empty but full, of memories, of second chances, of the family he never saw coming. Sometimes the miracle isn't in the thunder or the lightning. Sometimes it's just in opening your door and finding someone who stays. Where are you watching from? We'd love to hear where in the world you're joining us. Drop your city or country in the comments below and let us know which part of the story touched you the most. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our heartfelt stories that celebrate kindness, love, and the quiet strength of everyday people. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Your presence here truly means the world.